He walked into the interview room with the confidence of a man who thought he owned the sky. Daniel Hart, the CEO of Hart Tech Industries, one of Canada's fastest-growing agricultural tech companies, barely glanced up from his tablet. He didn't know it yet, but the young woman who had just stepped in was about to turn his world upside down. Maya Thompson stood quietly in front of him, her hands clasped, her clothes simple, her accent unmistakably rural. She had taken the bus at 4 a.m. from her family's small farm in Saskatchewan just to be here. She needed this job, not for herself, but for her father, who was recovering from heart surgery, and for the farm that was drowning in debt. But her soft voice and worn-out shoes were the first things Daniel noticed, and dismissed. "So," he said without looking up, "you're the farmer's daughter who thinks she can work in high-tech agriculture." His tone was sharp, arrogant, the kind of voice that made people feel small. Maya didn't flinch. She had grown up fixing tractors at -30, hauling hay at sunrise, and negotiating prices with suppliers twice her age. A rude CEO wasn't going to shake her. "I don't think I can," she said gently. "I know I can." Daniel finally looked up, eyebrow raised, amused. "All right," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Tell me what makes you better than the Harvard grads who applied before you." Maya took a breath. This was her moment. "When your engineers designed the new soil moisture sensors," she said, "you placed the calibration nodes too shallow. Prairie soil freezes deeper, and that causes false readings. It's why you're getting inaccurate data in central Canada. I fixed the problem on my own farm using an old wrench, copper wire, and some common sense." Daniel blinked. For the first time, he seemed unsure. "And how exactly did you figure that out?" he asked. Maya stepped closer to his desk. "Because unlike your engineers, I don't test things in boardrooms. I test them in real dirt, in real cold, with real crops depending on me. You design for theory, I design for survival." A quiet settled in the room. One of the senior managers who had been sitting by the wall slowly turned his head, impressed. Daniel opened his mouth but closed it again. He was losing control of the interview, and he knew it. Determined to regain his edge, he flipped to another page on his tablet. "Fine," he said. "What would you do differently with our latest irrigation algorithm that supposedly reduces water waste?" Maya's answer came instantly. "You collect surface data," she said, "but you don't account for underground water creep after snow melt. That's why your algorithm fails on older farms, like ours. Half the water you calculate is wasted, actually travels to the next row. Your system doesn't understand the land the way farmers do." The manager in the corner actually sat forward. Daniel's jaw tightened. "And how do you know this?" he asked again, his voice lower, different. Maya looked him straight in the eye. "Because last spring, our well ran almost dry keeping the crops alive. My father couldn't lift the buckets after his surgery, so I carried water by hand. Every row, every day. You learn real fast how the earth moves water when your family's survival depends on it." Something shifted in Daniel's expression. The arrogance faded, replaced by something unfamiliar, respect. He set the tablet aside. "Why do you want this job?" he asked quietly. Maya hesitated, her voice softer now. "Because my father spent his whole life feeding people who never knew his name. And now, when he needs help, I'm the only one who can save our farm. I don't want charity, I want a chance. That's all." Daniel looked down at his hands. For years, he had built technologies for farmers without ever stepping foot on a struggling family farm. The numbers he read never carried faces. But this young woman, she carried a whole life in her words. He stood up. "Maya," he said, "how soon can you start?" The manager in the corner smiled. Maya just stared at him, stunned. Are you serious?" Daniel extended his hand. "You just taught me more about real agriculture in 15 minutes than my entire R&D team did in 2 years. Not hiring you would be the biggest mistake of my career." When Maya shook his hand, tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. A week later, a black Hart Tech truck pulled into the Thompson family farm. Daniel himself stepped out, boots sinking into the soil. He walked the land with Maya, listening, learning. He saw the old barn her father built. The cracked irrigation lines she patched. The pride in her family's eyes when she introduced him not as a CEO, but as the man who believed in her. And when Hardtech launched its new prairie-tested sensor system 6 months later, it transformed farms across Canada. In every brochure, every presentation, one line stood above the rest. Inspired by a farmer's daughter who understands the land better than any machine. Maya's father cried when he read it. And Daniel, he often told people the truth, that the smartest person to ever walk into his company wasn't a genius from a big university, it was a girl from a small Saskatchewan farm who had the courage to speak what she knew. The message was simple, powerful, and unforgettable. Never underestimate someone who grew up fighting for what they love. They know more than you think, and they can change the world in ways you never imagined.